Happy Sabbath, everyone. Just like Will said, we're doing a half message each, so like 15 minutes. And yeah, it's a privilege to be up here today to share a message. My name, for those who don't know, because there's a few visitors, my name's Alan Perkins. And I've been attending Wallara for quite a few years now with my family. And today we're going to be learning Chinese. And I'm not a Chinese teacher, so where could this be going? I don't know. But a little bit about me. I'm not a preacher. I'm actually a carpenter by trade, and I've been doing it for quite a few years now. And I've started like a new gig this year with my brother-in-law, like do some like house flipping and stuff like that, a lot of renovations. And so I've been working alongside this builder, and me and him we renovate houses, and his team is it's actually quite challenging because all his people that work for him are Chinese. So, and I mean, they don't speak a word of English. Okay, so yeah, it's very difficult to get things done, but we're getting there. But also, it sometimes can be a little bit dangerous, working with someone that doesn't speak the same language as you. For instance, earlier this week, I had my finger squashed under do you know the fiber cement sheets, these heavy fiber cement sheets, and we're carrying them around, and then usually we just know when we're going to drop them. And then I think he dropped it a bit too early without saying something, or he maybe just didn't know how to say, I'm going to drop the sheet. And so my finger got caught underneath it. And I was just running around, and then the pain when you squash your finger, and you look at it and it starts going purple quickly, and then it's like a pain you just can't describe. You're almost in so much pain, you're almost speaking a different language, right? And so I'm thinking in my head, man, I need to learn Mandarin or something, or they need to learn English. But they're all Chinese, so maybe I need to learn Mandarin. But also, even the building plans, they have Chinese characters on them. So, but luckily now, with technology, we have Google Translate. So I've downloaded Google Translate on my phone, and there's an app where you can put the camera up to any bit of writing, and it will translate it automatically for you. So I've been doing that. But yeah, I guess. Oh, sorry, the clicker doesn't work. Does it? All right, next slide. Sorry, I'll say next slide. Sorry, yeah. Yeah. But what are Chinese characters? So Chinese characters are not just letters like the English alphabet, like A, B, C, D, not like that. They're more like pictures or symbols and drawings to make up a word, okay? And sometimes you combine these little Chinese characters and it makes a completely different word or a different sound. And when you're learning to speak or read Chinese, like we are going to be doing a little bit today, we're going to be learning one of the oldest languages in the world. In fact, the Chinese language has been known to be around for thousands of years, and they call it the pictograph language. So next slide. So some fun facts about the Chinese culture. So there are currently 1.4 billion people in China, and majority of them speak Mandarin, right? That's a lot of people. I think China and India have the most amount of people in the world. So yeah, that's a lot of people. Next slide. Yep. The pictograph language, this is the Chinese writing, is used more than any other language in the world. Okay, and that kind of makes sense, right? It's not really surprising because there's so many of them. Next slide. The Chinese invented paper. Okay, and what do you use paper for? To write things down, right? So I guess they would have, probably started writing things early on, once the languages were formed. Next one. And the supposed date of the Chinese language was established around 2500 BC. That's a long time ago, and which is close to the time of the Tower of Babel, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, next slide. Yeah. So today we're going to be spending most of our time in the book of Genesis, okay? And what the Bible teaches us is that we all come from Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve, we read the story, they have kids, their kids have kids, and so on and so forth. All right, and then eventually, we go into the story of Noah and his family, and then, God sends a worldwide flood, wipes everyone out, and Noah and his family survive the flood. Okay, and so pretty much we're all related to Noah, which means we're all related right now. So everyone's sitting here related, you're related to me, guys. It's pretty cool, right? But next slide. But if we turn to Genesis chapter 10, verse 15, we read about the different descendants and tribes that come from Noah's sons. Okay? So this is the line of Ham. So remember Noah had 3 sons. All right, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Canaan's oldest son was Sidon, the ancestor of the Sidonians. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Archites, Shinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. Now, this part of the book may seem a little bit boring and a bit of a tongue twister section, okay? Because whenever you get to the table of names and the families, you're like, oh, okay, whatever, just breeze over it. But I think it's actually quite important because you get to see, where people disperse and things like that as well. But it's one of the tribes called the Sinites. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I assume it's Sinites, and they are believed to be the people who migrated east to China. Okay, and also it's also believed that Japheth's line also mixed in as well. So, yeah, it's not 100% just their tribe. But ancient China in the Bible is also referred to the land of Sinim. Okay, and over the many years, I don't know how we go from Shinar, or to China. Maybe that's related. I'm not 100% sure, but I guess it does sound a little bit similar. China, just China. Sorry, I'm only half Chinese, so I can only half pronounce it. Even in the book of Isaiah, if we turn to Isaiah 49:12, now many translations might be different for some of you, or you might have footnotes, but it also refers to the land of Sinim, or the land of Sin, which is mentioned, and it refers to modern-day China today, okay? But I also do want to make a note that some translations may have the land of Aswan, okay, but the Masoretic texts read the land of Sinim. But it's also noted to the land to the far east, okay? So it's east, so it's China. Next slide. The Tower of Babel, right? Now, before everyone spread out around the world and scattered around the world, the Bible does teach us that we all spoke the same language, okay? And I hope that would have happened today because I'd be easier at work with the guys I'm working with. But unfortunately, God changed all that. Next slide. So we read in Genesis 11, in verse 1, we read that at one time all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. Okay, so all the people speaking the same language, this includes the Chinese people as well, right? Verse 2, as the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. They began saying to each other, let's make bricks and harden them with fire. Then they said, come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world. Okay, now did God want that? Did God want people to stay all together and to build a tower and just to honor themselves? No, I don't think so. I think God had wanted everyone to spread out, multiply around the world instead. And were these people honoring God by building this huge tower? No, exactly right. But they wanted to honor themselves. So what does God do, okay, when he sees this? Next slide. Verse 5 says, but the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower the people were building. Look, he said, the people are united and they speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other. Next slide. In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world. and the people stopped building the city. That is why the city is called Babel, because that is where the Lord confused the people with different languages. In this way, he scattered them all over the world. Okay, so, the Tower of Babel story is quite important because I guess growing up, or you get a lot of people also asking, why do we speak different languages? If we all come from the same person. And here the Bible explains it. But also, when God scattered these people all around the world, perhaps some of these nations or tribes or clans or whatever, perhaps they took home and preserved some sort of knowledge from before the scattering. And they took, back stories and things that happened in Genesis and the stories we read before the scattering of people. And I do believe that the Chinese characters are related to the stories in Genesis. In fact, whoever invented the Chinese writing knew about the stories in Genesis. What do I mean by that? Next slide. So here, see, we're going to be learning Chinese. Okay. So here we have the character for create, okay? And to make up this character, like I said before, you got to add little characters and it makes up a completely different word. Okay, I wish I had a pointer, but yeah, I don't have one. So the word create is made up of a combination of speak, dust, life, and walk. Okay? Now, what does this mean? Who put this together? So if we all turn to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, it says, "Then the Lord formed the man from the dust, from the ground. He breathed the breath of life into the man's nostrils," okay, to speak, "and also the breath of life. And the man became a living person." The man walks. Okay, that's the first one. I'll give you a few more examples if you're not convinced. Next one, please. The word forbidden. All right. So this character, it includes 2 trees plus God. You can see up the top there, it's like little 2 trees at the top there, and then below it's the God, so that makes the word forbidden. Okay, even the trees look like trees, right? So I guess that's how they sort of would have formed it over the years. Okay, but if we turn to Genesis chapter 2, verse 9. "The Lord made all sorts of trees grow up from the ground, trees that were beautiful and that produced delicious fruit. In the middle of the garden, he placed the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." So that represents the 2 trees there, okay? And obviously God's doing this. But what's it got to do with forbidden, right? So in verse 16 of chapter 2, it says, "But the Lord warned him." Here, this is God speaking to Adam. "You may freely eat the fruit of every tree in the garden except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." Okay, so this is one tree that's forbidden. Okay, God tells Adam. But here we have 2 trees, right? So what's the other tree? But if we turn to Genesis chapter 3, verse 22, verse 22. "Then the Lord said, look at the humans being..." Okay, so they just ate the fruit, okay? "Then the Lord said, look, the human beings have become like us, knowing both good and evil." Okay, so they ate from the tree of knowledge. "What if they reach out and take the fruit from the tree of life and eat it? Then they will live forever." So the Lord God banished them from the Garden of Eden. Okay, so that tree was also forbidden. Okay, God was like, "No, you're not going to eat from that tree either, so I'll kick you out of the garden." All right. Let's go to the next one, please. Yes, there's a word for devil, or a character for devil. And here we have private, alive, person, and garden. Okay, let's debunk this. So the first word we have is private, okay, to make up the word devil. When the serpent came up to Eve in the garden, Was she in private? Yes, she was in private. Okay? Next word, we have alive. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 says, "Stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." Okay, the devil is a real thing, all right? And I know earlier this week we had, people was out walking around the streets doing Halloween, okay? And they make it as if like it's just a fictional character, but it's a real thing, okay? It's live. And then people, I can go on about it more, how they're just normalizing the devil when it's making like it's just fictional, but it's not. Okay, and next we have person. Okay. And it's in Job chapter 1, verse 7. "And the Lord said to Satan," so this is the Lord speaking to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking back on and forth on it." Okay, so the Satan can take, took the form of a serpent, can take the form of a person as well. And here he was reading that he's walking to and fro on the earth. And the last one we have is garden. And where did the devil do his first temptation? In the garden, correct. Okay, so just remember the devil one there, because we're going to be using it in the next one as well. And it's also involved in the word tempter. So you can see what we just learned there on the left-hand side, on the bottom there, devil. And then we have cover, which is that long stroke. And then 2 trees. Okay, I'm sure everyone can learn trees by today, right? So you have, to make up the word tempter, you have devil, cover, and 2 trees. All right? Now, I'm sure you guys can probably work it out yourselves. But I'll explain it. The devil covered himself as a serpent, correct? And he covered himself and as a serpent and went up to Eve in the garden. And then the 2 trees, like we spoke about before. So in Genesis chapter 3, verse 3 says, "It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we are not allowed to eat. God said you must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die." Okay, that's Eve saying that. And then Satan goes, "You won't die," the serpent replied to the woman. "God knows your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it." It's tempting her, right? "And you will be like God, knowing both good and evil." So what was the serpent doing? Tempting, right? Okay. And he was covered, and he was talking about the trees, okay, eating from the trees. So this woman's like, "Ooh, I want to eat this fruit," right? It's delicious. So what does she do? She covets it. Can we go to the next one, please? Okay. This next one's quite simple, yes? 2 trees plus woman equals desire. We read in Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, "The woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful and the fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some of the fruit and ate it." Okay, the woman desired the fruit. Now, if Genesis never existed, right, and the person, whoever wrote this, where are they getting it from? How are they putting all these things together to equal the word, Say they never knew about the Bible stories. How? Is it a coincidence? No, I don't think so. Okay, this next one's a little bit different. So, next one we have the word naked, okay? So, naked can be spelt in 3 different ways. Okay, it's on the right-hand side there, on the right. See, naked, naked, naked. It can be spelled 3 different ways. And when Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, what did they feel? They felt naked, right? Genesis 3 verse 7 says, "At that moment, their eyes were opened and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. So they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves." Now, if you were going to design a language, why would you use the word fruit 3 times for the word naked? How is that related? Right? Unless it's from Genesis. All right, next slide, please. Thank you, Kerry. Okay, now we're going to jump a bit forward here, and we're going to have a look at the word boat. So the word boat, it's made up of 3 characters: vessel, 8, and people. So, you guys know the story of Noah's Ark, right? Okay, you probably know what I'm going to say. So not surprising, the first one, we have vessel. All right, that's not surprising, that's not a coincidence. God wanted Noah to build an ark for this flood. The next character in the middle here, we have 8. Now, I want to ask you guys, how many people were on the ark? 8, right? But this person could have just wrote 8. Like, it could have meant 8 sides, it could have meant 8 days, it could have meant 8, I don't know, 8 anything. But it was 8 people, okay? That's how it's written. Noah, in Genesis chapter 7, verse 6, it says, Noah was 600 years old when the flood covered the earth. He went on board the boat to escape the flood, and he and his wife, and his sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and their wives as well. That's another 8 people, okay? So, yeah, the people really shows us it's not just 8 animals, 8 days, 8 sides, it's 8 people. Next slide, please. Okay, so to conclude here, as we know, after the flood, the 8 people that were on the ark multiplied and scattered throughout the world. And they carried off the knowledge of what happened in Genesis, and I do believe it's found hidden here in this ancient language. There's many more that I can go on about, but I've only got 15 minutes, so I don't want to bore you guys. The Chinese characters were developed long before the actual Bible was put together as well. So I do believe this is evidence that proves the Bible is true. And the Bible, being true, tells us that Jesus is also coming back very soon. And when Jesus comes back, it will be like the days of Noah. Noah and his family were saved. They listened to God's warning and listened to God's command. But I want to ask you, sitting here today, will you do the same? God bless. Thank you.
Good morning, Woollahra Church. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in online as well. Thanks, Alan, for sharing that. I had no idea about that at all. I was sitting there and sort of like quasi-Googling as you were talking as well, trying to, that's amazing. Blew my mind. I don't know about the rest of you, but I really enjoyed that, so thank you, Alan, for taking the time to share it. I'll introduce myself before I get to the sharing today. My name's William. I've been coming to this church now for a few years. Alan actually brought me to the church. I met him at Waverley Rugby Club back in 2016, I think it was. Quite a while now. He was actually a cult and I was just a loner. And he saw me walking home by myself one day and he was just like, "Hey, you want to come to church?" I was like, "Sure." It was a great idea. So other than that, I'm in the Navy. That's where I work. Married for a year now to my wife Nardine, which is great. Other than that, I'm originally from Brisbane, living down here, just working. It's just, it's not just us, part of God's big family, but yeah, me and my wife. They've asked me, Pastor Daniel asked me to share today, and which sort of came about, and I believe God works in mysterious ways. And my topic for today is choose life. It's based off the Bible scripture, Deuteronomy 30:19 to 20. A bit of backstory to this. This sharing I'm about to share with you is not even 24 hours old. And what I mean by that is yesterday we went to a funeral in Brisbane. We flew in at midnight last night. Between the funeral finishing and me standing here before you today, God spoke into me. And the way he did that was the funeral we attended was a man named Tui Koloni, and who he was my sister's husband's father, so a quasi-father-in-law. But it was a bit more than that to myself and to our family. He was more like an uncle. My sister and her now husband have 4 kids, and he was their grandfather, so my nephew's grandfather, and I've actually known him for a lot longer since I was a child, because me and my sister's husband used to play rugby in Brisbane against each other, and he'd always take the time to say hello, and I didn't really know much about him until obviously my sister and him started dating, and that relationship sort of flourished. So I'd like to share this verse with you today because this was his favourite verse. And when we were doing the eulogy yesterday, his brother shared this verse, and it just spoke to me about the choices we get to make in life. Deuteronomy 30:19-20 reads, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Choose life. This plea is given by Moses, and he addresses the Israelites. They were just outside the promised land, preparing to enter. He sets before them a choice between life and death. God gave them the choice. He had delivered them from Egypt. They'd been wandering through the desert, failed many times, bestowed upon them the commandments. And when the promised land was right before them, God in his wisdom and his grace, through Moses, gave them the choice, life or death. Choosing life in this context isn't merely about a survival or a physical existence. It's about embracing a life steeped in love for God, obedience to his commands, and aligning ourselves with his purpose. Most of us, if not all of us, have seen both sides of life and death through our own choices. We talked with the children this morning as I put together that. It seems like simple choices. What do we wear today? What will I have for breakfast? What will I watch on TV? Will I go out for a drink tonight? Will I give in to temptation once more? Will my addiction define who I am? These are all choices God puts ahead of us. Now, on many occasions, I'll speak for myself here, a lot of the wrong choices were choices that were selfish in ambition, which always led to an outcome that left me feeling unfulfilled, with no real significant purpose in my life. Living for God and choosing God, however, presents opportunities that I could have never imagined. I've grown, learnt, and drawn closer to God. If I didn't choose to accept Alan's hand in friendship that day, I wouldn't have been introduced to this church. If I chose to ignore where God places people in my life, I'd probably be more alone than I've ever been. When we choose God, life is good. God is good. And there is no shortage of goodness he's willing to give to you if you choose him. From choosing God, I've spent time with my family. By choosing God, he sent me away on missions overseas to enact goodness to strangers I'll never meet again. By choosing God, he's gifted me a wife. By choosing God, my family has welcomed sons and daughters. And by choosing God, he also lets you say goodbye to those you love. Say goodbye to the ones you love. Now, when Moses presents this choice of death, life or death, it isn't a personal decision for you. The reading isn't to one individual, and it's not for their own life. In fact, it's a generational question. Will you choose life so that your children's 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 children will live? The way I like to think is Sydney traffic. It's terrible. When I'm driving by myself, I will do what I need to get there as fast as I possibly can. When I was driving with my nephews yesterday in the car, I was 5 kilometres below the speed limit at all times. The choice I made to speed or not to speed, no one should speed by the way, but the choice I made not to speed, I knew because it had a direct effect on my nephews. When choosing God, whether as a parent, as an individual, brother, sister, cousin, imagine what effect that will have to the people around you. Imagine what effect it will have to not this lifetime, but the next lifetime of children. God left the final decision for Israel to make. It was one of free choice for the people. The covenant mediator, speaking on behalf of Yahweh, of God, could only lay out the alternatives, make them as clear as possible, to appeal to Israel to choose life. And that's what he does for us every single day. But you're probably sitting there and thinking, how do I choose life? What does that look like? I try to break it down into 4 points. I think we should just go slide, please. Next one, sorry. Just the next. And with these points, they are by no means an absolute answer, but rather just something to remind yourself about. So my first point is prioritize your relationship with God. Proverbs verse 3, 5-6 reads, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." Our lives are full of choices, but the most crucial one is the relationship with God. By choosing life, we are choosing to cultivate a connection with him, to walk in his ways, to trust in his guidance. In a world that's full of distraction, full of sin, full of temptation, prioritizing our spiritual growth becomes essential for true fulfillment. An example for me is pretty much for the last, I want to say, about 9 years solid. I challenge myself every morning, bar the Sabbath, to wake up around 4:30 in the morning and read my Bible. I tell some of my friends this, and they're like, the Bible's still there at 6 o'clock. And I said, yeah, I know. But if I get up at 4:30 and I read that Bible, it's done. Whether I go back to sleep or I press on to the gym or I get to work early, I made that commitment so that every day, at least, if everything else fails and I've had the worst day ever, past 4:30 a.m., I still read my Bible. Point number 2, living with purpose. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reads, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Choosing life means steering our actions toward God-given purposes. It involves serving others, embodying compassion, and leading lives that reflect his love. Each day presents opportunities to make decisions that align with a higher calling, choosing life over complacency or indifference. The way I put this to the youth, I work with a youth group in a church out at Blacktown, and I read this to them, and the way I put it to them is like, everyone knows Instagram Reels, Snapchat. I don't know if this community knows, you're a bit more mature. However, the latest thing is getting them social media clips. It's all about the individual. And I challenged them. I said to them, I was like, if you were to make a reel, a Snapchat of how many people you helped during the day, how many people would be on that? Everyone can take a selfie, but how many people could you take a photo of and say, I helped Anna cross the street today, I made breakfast for mum and dad? Living with purpose. Point number 3, embrace hope. Romans 5 verses 1 to 4 reads, Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have the peace of God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into his grace in which we now stand. And we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us. Life's hard. Life is challenging. There's no getting away from it. We might be tempted to lean into despair or hopelessness. Jeff sharing his friend on death's door. He wants to meet death under his own accord. I guess what I would share for your friend Jeff would be, don't lean towards despair and hopelessness. Lean into God. Choose life. Jesus demands that we commit to hope, even in the darkest times. It involves trusting God's promise, knowing that he is with us, and believing in a future ordained by his love. The man I spoke to you earlier about, Tui Kaluni, he was a faithful man, but he was also a man who knew how hard life can be. Like all of us, life can challenge us. And if we choose death, it will encompass us. However, due to his faith and his commitment to Christ, he worked back. You can never be more saved when Jesus is in your heart, but he worked hard to ensure that although we stumble, we can get back up. We choose life. We choose to stand in the light, even in our darkest times. And the final point, inspiring future generations. Psalm 115, 12 to 14 reads, As God blesses you, you will multiply and you will witness an increase in your life. He will not only bless you, but he will bless your generation. Just as Moses urged the Israelites to consider the impact of their choices on their descendants, we too are called to be mindful of the legacy we create. By choosing life, we establish a foundation of faith, integrity for our future generations. We are beautifully and wonderfully made in God's image. He wanted you to be here today. He wanted you to live. Our God is a powerful God. Your life is on purpose. Your life has purpose in God. Choose to walk with him. Church, this morning, I don't know what struggles you've brought in here. I don't know how your week was or how it unfolded. But if I can do anything to honor the legacy of Tui Kaluni, it would be implore you to leave all that at the feet of Jesus and choose life. Not just the life that has you existing, but a life full of Christ's purpose, fulfillment. The invitation to choose life is a daily and intentional commitment. It's a journey marked by faithfulness, transformation, and hope. As we navigate the paths of our lives, let us respond to the divine calling of faith, love, courage, and resolve, knowing that in choosing life, we choose the abundance that God envisions for us. May our choices today and every day reflect the love, grace, and eternal promise of Jesus. Amen.